Hello and welcome to How to Peer Review using Google Docs. This video will tell you how to make comments on other people's papers, what kinds of comments to make, and how to avoid common errors in peer reviewing papers. One of the wonderful things about digital technology is you can peer review papers with your classmates as effectively as in a face-to-face class, but do it anytime or place at your own speed. Then you can access that feedback anywhere with an internet connection, computer, phone, tablet, and ask questions anytime you need help, not just in the classroom. But as with face-to-face peer review, there are a few rules and guidelines that you need to follow when you're peer reviewing your classmates' papers. The first really important rule for online peer reviewing is that you should never edit your classmates' work. Now, there are actually things you can do to prevent people from editing your document and just making comments on your document when you share the file. But in general, you have to keep in mind there is a fine line between providing feedback and cheating. And when you actually type into the document for a student, making changes for them, that's crossing the line. So while you can insert end commentary, which is generally why I don't suggest making it so that your classmate can't edit your paper, because inserting an end comment at the end of the draft is really helpful. While that is okay, you should otherwise never type directly into a student's paper. Instead, give them the advice, how to, and explanation as a marginal comment. So never fix mistakes for them. Tell them when they've made a mistake. Never rewrite sentences or add sentences, parts of sentences, or any words at all. And generally, don't type it all directly into the document. Only you should make changes in your own drafts, not your peer. Additionally, you don't want to try to address all the problems with a paper. So if a student has, say, 5 run-on sentences on a page, you might highlight the first couple and provide some advice how to fix them. And if you're worried the student won't be able to locate the other ones, you could, for instance, highlight all run-ons in a color and let them know to look out for them. If the paper feels like a hot mess, don't try to fix everything. Provide general advice on fixing common problems and focus on the larger issues like, is there enough evidence? Do they hit everything in the prompt? So don't make a comment on every repeated error. Focus on the largest or most common problems. Don't make too many huge comments. So really, really long comments aren't always the best. Be simple and direct. Other students might get overwhelmed or feel nitpicked if you provide too much feedback, so the right balance is really, really important. Achieving an important balance is really crucial when it comes to providing the best feedback. You also don't want to be too critical or too nice. Be respectful in your comments. Even if someone clearly didn't spend a lot of time on their essay, consider they might have had a good reason, like maybe their son was up all night sick, and a negative comment will only make them feel worse and more stressed out. Positive comments go a long way. Tell them what they did right or well, so they know how to keep doing those things. But at the same time, don't avoid giving useful feedback when an essay needs it, because you don't want to be mean. So don't be condescending, don't forget to consider reasons why a peer might have struggled, and don't forget to include positive comments and encouragement. Don't avoid critical feedback to spare feelings either. Diplomacy is a hard skill, but essential when providing criticism, and your job is to provide feedback that will make your peers' paper better in a way they will accept and understand it. My last little bit of advice is to say, be courteous and do your best. Someone is depending on you for your help. Stay on schedule, don't be late, and give it your best effort. Even if you don't think you're the best writer, your advice is valuable. Maybe you'll get a paper from someone and you look at it and you say, this is perfect. There is nothing I could possibly say to make it better. Chances are, if you took your time and really scrutinized it, there might be something that you pick up on that writer didn't. No matter what, do your best. So now that you know a little bit about the rules and guidelines for peer reviewing, it's time to talk about the technical aspects of it, how to actually do it. There are generally 4 ways that you can share your documents through Google Docs. You can download a PDF or a .doc and send it as an attachment. You can email as an attachment, share with others, or get a shareable link, which is what I recommend you do. So the first way to do it is the old school method. And this is where you actually go to File, Download As, and download it either as a Microsoft Word doc or PDF. Those would be the two recommended file options. And then you would save it to your computer, go to your mail document or your chat or your discussion board post or Dropbox or whatever you're doing, and then upload that file that you find on your computer. That's the first way to do it. The second way to do it is a little bit more intuitive, and that involves emailing it as an attachment. And you do this through your Google account. So again, you go to File, you go to Email as Attachment, and then it usually will attach it as a PDF, but you can also select other formats. Send, type in whoever you're going to send it to here, type in a message if you need to, and if you want to, you can also send a copy to yourself. So that's a pretty easy way to do it as well. The third and fourth ways involve sharing the Google document. The first way involves sharing it through email. So Google will send an email to somebody who you invite to edit your document. So you go to the blue button in the upper right-hand corner, click Share, then type in the name or the email addresses. Remember, you should use Hawkmail email addresses, or for teachers or professors, hack.edu email addresses, so they're using their hack Google accounts and not their personal Google accounts. Type in their name, and then when you hit done, it'll send them an email notification that a document is ready to share. And the fourth way to do it is access through the same thing, go up to that blue share button, but instead of entering names or email addresses, go to Get Shareable Link. Then what you would do is you would copy and paste that link directly in an email, a discussion board post, or a chat. And this is what I recommend. And the reason why I recommend this is because you never have to worry about permissions. So sometimes people have multiple Google accounts. And if they signed into the wrong account, what will happen is it will tell them they won't have access to your document. But if you share a link to it, no matter what account they're using, they'll be able to bring up your document. But only people who have the link can bring up your document. So you don't have to worry about it becoming public. So now that you know how to share your document, it's time to start talking about how you're going to be providing feedback on other people's documents. And that is essentially making comments using the comment feature. So in general, there are 3 kinds of marginal comments that you'll be making when you do your peer review. These include answering or providing feedback based on questions from a prompt or some kind of peer review guide, general feedback on writing and ideas, and pointing out errors. So with questions from a prompt, you might provide comments for specific sections of a paper. For instance, if the prompt or the writing guidelines ask you to look at a thesis statement, you would highlight and comment on that thesis statement. However, if you have to do holistic feedback, if the prompt is asking you, for instance, to describe the story's dominant impression, well, that's about the whole story. And it's asking you to do something about the whole story's dominant impression and not just one little part of the text. In that case, those kind of comments you can reserve for the end. And that's going to be something that you're going to have to make the judgment call on. Is it something that I can talk about in a short chunk of text, or is it something that's talking about the whole paper? In that case, reserve it for the end. You'll also be doing general feedback on writing and ideas, and this is your feedback. So passages you liked, things the writer did well, areas that need improvement, and things that you didn't get. These are not necessarily things specifically mentioned in a prompt, but as you're reading through, what is your impression? What do you feel about it as you're reading? Make comments on that as well. And finally, pointing out writing errors. So this is often referred to as proofreading. So you want to look for errors like grammar, punctuation, spelling, run-on, and incomplete sentences, as well as formatting errors and just in general awkward writing, which usually indicates a grammatical issue. So in other words, you're going to be proofreading but not fixing those mistakes. You will highlight the mistake if it's a whole sentence or even if it's just one period, and then provide a comment. Okay, this sentence was a run-on sentence. You need to break it up into 2 sentences. Or this was an incomplete sentence. You need to add a subject. Or I just didn't understand what you were saying in the sentence. You need to revise it. Anything like that would be a helpful marginal comment. So when you peer review papers, you always want to read twice. When I grade your papers, I don't just grade it in one fell swoop. I always read it through twice to make sure I'm giving the most effective advice. And you need to try to do that as well. So generally when you peer review, you're either going to have a very specific guide that you're asked to follow, or you're going to be asked to just kind of do it free form. And these are the 2 approaches you can take depending on whether or not you have a guide. So if you have a guide that you have to follow and provide specific commentary based on that guide, the first read you go through, you just can provide general comments and general impressions and feedback on just your first thoughts as you're reading through, anything that catches your attention, including errors. And then when you do your second read, after you've been through the whole thing and you kind of have your brain wrapped around it and you understand what's being written about, then you can start focusing on the specialized comments pertaining to the assignment, as well as, and of course most importantly, completing tasks from the guides. But if you don't have any specific guidelines to follow, if your professor is just like, take a look at your fellow students' papers and give them feedback, or if you're doing this on your own, the first read, you again would do general comments, general impressions, things that caught your eye, as well as errors, those grammatical errors and typos and things like that. The second read, you would again focus your comments based on assignment requirements. Take a closer look on your own at what is in the assignment. Is the person whose paper you're peer reviewing hitting all of those requirements? Is there anything missing? Are they not doing a great job on any of those requirements? They need improvement. In this case, you're kind of looking yourself at what the assignment requires and providing feedback based on what you think they're doing right and wrong per the specific assignment.